In this video, I want to talk about this rainbow sense, this colorful perception, this perception that gives people hope and purpose and gives them a perception of intrigue and mystery, and for nothing, in place of nothing, for some kind of idea of purpose and mystery, intrigue that gives life some kind of value beyond the value that we can obviously recognize on a day-to-day basis, such as eating and things like that. And I think that's why certain people can believe things like astrology and do all sorts of things like this. If it's not a complete denial of reality, it's something like this, where they're just accepting some kind of truth but not necessarily recognizing the implication that has on the other facts that they know are true and their own belief system and understanding the reality that we're living in. And I think that's why, people can, it's this perception where there's this mystery and intrigue. You place a still image of a perception based on an idea. So you look at a forest, you get this idea in your head that boils in your head, and you have this perception, this preconceived notion based on experience and previous perception. And you can consolidate it based on all these different experiences and perceptions, how your perception changes based on what you've seen. Say you're going into a movie theater, you come out, your perception changes, the lights very bright when you walk outside if it's a day, and then you notice all these different things. You're sitting there, and all of a sudden your perception changed based off the movie you watched, and your perception of reality changes based on all sorts of things, to some extent more in certain people than others, but you get this idea. I think it's something that can be seen in everyone, where it sort of changes your outside perception of where you are, what you're doing, how this environment can be so easily been manipulated. The environment, this space that we live in, this can be reduced to space, and it can be manipulated in so many different ways based on our own perception. And it doesn't matter how the environment looks to begin with, because it has this, it's more controlled by this perception. It's controlled more by perception and less by certain characteristics in the environment, and how it changes, and how your perception can change, and how this perception can give you some kind of magical sense, some kind of colorful sense of a constantly changing reality and things like that. Sort of like the thing I mentioned earlier, but I didn't finish, about the forest, and have these preconceived notions. You put an image, two and two together. You put an image and this and that, and all these different things together to get this this preconceived notion. You apply it to this previous experience in fantasy and fiction, things like that. All these things, and you apply it to it, and it creates some kind of mystery and intrigue to the experience that you're seeing. And it changes perception. Your perception, like one change of perception, can change how you entirely view something. And it's usually a spatial perception of understanding the environment, how the environment changes, and all sorts of things like this, and how this perception can make you feel like you're constantly chasing something, that you're constantly going for something, something's constantly moving forward, you're constantly moving towards something, something's always ahead of you, there's always something there to have, but you're not chasing it. It's like you're not chasing it, it's ignoring the idea of the chase, and always accepting something that's happening, almost like living in the moment, and feeling like there's something ahead, but you're not chasing it. And it's just this intrigue beyond the darkness of the forest that you're looking at, and feeling like there's something beyond that, and there's not much beyond that. So we're experiencing this perception. It creates a misconstruction of reality, because this reality, obviously it's based on our own subjective perceptions, but there is reality out there, and the reality that we're experiencing is based on our own little perceptions. But there is something out there, and the reaction that's happening between us and the environment still exists, regardless of our perception. That's our perception, and we need to recognize, the people that don't recognize, that our perception is different than reality. The reality exists, and the reality of your perception is that your perception is having a certain effect on you, and it's having these chemicals in your brain, and the synapses creating the electricity is causing certain perceptual changes in your brain, and the perception in and of itself is in reality based on these chemical reactions, based on this ethereal projection of reality that we have, based on these experiences that we're experiencing. Just because it's ethereal, this process that we're experiencing, the effect, the result, this reaction, doesn't mean it's not based on some kind of objective reality that's causing this kind of thing to happen to begin with. So we're experiencing some kind of objective reality no matter what we think that we're experiencing. So it doesn't matter what your perception is, how colorful your perception is. It doesn't change the reality that we're living in. It doesn't change your rainbow sense of reality. It doesn't change the way that reality specifically in specific works. It's working a specific way no matter what. And it's all about this understanding that no matter how much mystery and intrigue you add to the life game or whatever it may be to your perception of understanding that we're living in, it doesn't change the facts that if you already know something about reality and you add mystery and intrigue to reality and recognition, and understand and making the game more interesting, all you're doing is projecting your value, your bias, your want, your need. And that need is obviously something that's existing, but the need you have is only a projection, only something that you make up from your own human perspective or your own conscious perspective, but the need that you project onto the world is something that's objectively existing in this world. So I think I changed the subject more than I thought reasonable in this video, but I think I'll live with it. So our perceptions, doesn't matter how vivid or profound they are, it's still the reality we're living in. You can be swooped up by some sort of, it's chemicals in your brain, sort of like, ooh, all of a sudden I feel good, but it's just the dopamine rushing through your head or something in your head that's causing you to have a certain perception of something, and it's obviously an act of, it's an objective act that's happening that causes this perception anyway. So regardless of that, I think I made my point good enough. Hopefully I didn't lose the point too much, but our perceptions mean, and these mysterious and intrigue and these perceptions, this happiness that we have is a state of mind. It's nothing more. It's this state of mind that we apply to a certain situation based on these different reactions, causing different perceptions, different transparencies and understandings of certain situations by looking at a still, and these simplistic, such as looking at a still image to give an example, and making all sorts of connotations and perceptions based on that, leading one thing to another, doing nothing more than creating another perception based on this state of mind that we apply to the reality that we're living in. Or a state of mind based on a logical process of thinking, creating these things called feelings, and then projecting that onto the world that we're living in, making it seem like it's more than something than it is. It's a cycle that's a perpetuation, a self-perpetuating cycle, a positive feedback loop of experience and perception, things like that. So thank you, and I think I made my point clear enough. So until next time, and bye.